We were basically, at a crossroads where we're like, do you want to continue following the path that we had been in the corporate space, or were we ready to kind of make that leap and do something different?
Hello and welcome to Your Career Revolution presented by the Entrepreneur Source. My name is Mike Toper and we've got a fantastic episode to share with you today with some wonderful guests. Really been looking forward to this one for a matter of time now. Before we introduce everybody, I'd like to bring in my co-host. She is the Chief of Brand Ideology, Tamara Loring with the Entrepreneur Source. T, how's your spring shaping up so far?
Loving it. And what a great day. Always fun when we get to visit with individuals to find out what prompted them to reimagine and reclaim the life of their dreams. So Joe and Cheri, can't wait to hear your story.
Yeah, and let's bring in our guest here. We'll introduce them. First of all, starting with Joe and Cheri Mercer.
Hey, so Joe and Cheri Mercer were the franchise owners of Zavelle Bentonville, a franchise out of Nashville.
Excellent. And TES clients, obviously, who was helped by this man, Phil. If you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, Phil Macko, career ownership coach with the Entrepreneur Source, and so excited to have you both here today.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into the parallels that you guys have crossed here. But first, just diving into things a little bit more, because this is a bit of a unique circumstance. I want to start with Joe and Cheri. You guys had decades between you of corporate experience. Joe, you had been with Walmart for a number of years in HR, and it seems from the outside looking in like you guys had some really good job security and kind of were doing good at the time. And then I was just wondering, can you share with us a little bit about your career experience and touch on kind of what led you to seek a change?
Oh, yeah. I've been able to tell this story many times, and I think it's fascinating of what a company like Walmart provides for its associates across the globe. But, we had some opportunity to go to work for Walmart many years ago, right? And we got to do jobs within the company, especially these past 20 plus here in Northwest Arkansas at the home office. But just an incredible career Cheri and I both had. And so we got to a point during COVID, probably in early 2022, I got to work with her, right, Mike? And I realized I knew my wife was smart, but when I was working beside her in the office at home, I'm like, my wife is really smart. I need to go into business with her. And so we started talking about buying a business, finding a business. And so we looked at a few things in Northwest Arkansas, but it just didn't hit right. And so that's what really stemmed us to go, towards looking for maybe a franchise coach. And luckily, those stars above aligned, and I picked Phil because I was going through my LinkedIn, and we connected and got to talk. And I told Cheri I had this incredible experience with Phil and told her about it. And so those were kind of the beginning stages of our relationship. And Cheri did the same thing. She reached out to and had another franchise coach that she was talking to with Entrepreneur Source. And then we did our stuff separately, and then they brought us together with Phil. And so that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. It was me seeing how smart my wife was, T, and Phil, you've heard that story from me many times. And then me saying, hey, you be the boss. I'll do whatever. Just put me in operations and let's run this thing. And so, that's really the honest truth, how we wanted to go do something different. We had this opportunity at Walmart to get to step away, and we jumped all over it.
Well, outside of business, first of all, that sounds like just the recipe for a good marriage. Let's be honest. She's a smart one. I'll do what you say. Cheri, can you kind of just add to that or shed a little more light on kind of what led you to? I mean, Joe mentioned you guys are sitting at home in COVID. Kind of what did you think when, he was bringing these business ideas or the seeds started to get planted? Because again, it seems like you guys were both kind of well established.
Yeah, absolutely. We were basically, at a crossroads where we're like, do you want to continue following the path that we had been in the corporate space, or were we ready to kind of make that leap and do something different, something vastly different, but using some skills that we had developed and some interests that we had. And honestly, with Phil's help, he was able to really help us and guide us in that right direction. And we landed in a wonderful place. So, yeah.
Well, this is so fascinating too. I mean, from the outside looking in, people around you probably are thinking, why on earth would you leave something that is so amazing? I mean, you've worked not only 5 years, 10 years, decades, combined as a family, half a century, over half a century. So why would you leave that behind? What itch was that not scratching that you felt like you needed to pivot or do something for yourself?
I think it was just, and I've heard this from business owners who worked, because let me back up. In Northwest Arkansas, you'll find a lot of this, people who spent decades with that organization and stepping back and going, hey, I want to do one more thing before I quote, retire. And they go out and they'll invest in a business or do something like that. And so Cheri and I are like, you know what, this is the right time to do this. If we wait later, we're not going to be able to do it. If we did it earlier, we probably weren't ready. And I think it's just the perfect time to dive into the entrepreneurship, those that are willing to take the risk. And we were there, we were ready. And I think, there are a lot of things that align too, Phil. We talked about that. Finances really have to be, in line. The timing has to be part of it. The availability of the market. We really understand Northwest Arkansas because we've been here for so long. You're talking over 20 years. We've watched this part of the country grow like no other. It's just an amazing place to live, and it's continuing to grow. And so we're pretty excited about what's happening right now in our business. But anyway, yeah.
Cheri, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, we were just ready to transition. Within a corporate space, you're able to add value, but we were really wanting to connect with the community, with people, people that we don't normally get to interact with on a daily basis. And I will tell you, Zabel has been the absolute perfect fit because we're able to help people, meet people, and really be more involved in the community. So I mean, this was an ideal fit for us.
Yeah.
T, it sounds a little bit like, I mean, they were, out humbly, you guys were successful, but it looks like they were looking to maybe write a little more to their own story, T.
That's exactly what I was thinking, right? Like they were either working on somebody else's dream, or maybe this was an opportunity. And listening to both Joe and Cheri talk about what was missing, maybe being able to give back to the community in a different way. I think the other thing I saw on the blog is the opportunity to create your own legacy, work on your own dream for yourself and your family. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we have 6 kids, right? And so they're all grown adults. They all have great careers. One of our sons works for us, which is great to have him on because he's in the trades and he understands how everything works within the walls of the building. And so moving on to our next franchise that we open up, Phil, hopefully by the end of the year, he'll help with that build out and working through that thing. So having him on board has been really helpful. But having this opportunity to build a business to say, hey, kids, y'all want to take this on to the next level and continue to grow it in Northwest Arkansas or somewhere else, whatever that may be. That really excited Cheri and I. And our kids were just pumped whenever they heard we were going to do this. And so, they knew more about the services that were available, T, than we did before we ever signed up for Isabel.
And wait a minute, did I hear you right? Did you say by the end of the year opening up a next franchise, next business with the same company or a different concept?
Same company.
Same. Okay, so becoming a multi-unit operator. Oh my gosh, talk about building an empire. And wait a minute, you guys have been in business since what, September last year?
6 months.
Oh my. I mean, one would expect that there is going to be a ramp up, but boy, you guys are trailblazers.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one exciting thing, again, working for Walmart for so many years, you always have to sell your ideas. Yeah. Well, with what we've learned just in these past 6 months since we've opened up, we've grown. Our sales have been fantastic, and we don't have to build a PowerPoint. We don't have to sell it to any other leader. We just basically sleep on it. We have the discussion. We pull our numbers together. We sleep on it, and then we move forward. So makes
We've
for
heard about your
pretty,
extensive board meetings. I
yeah, it's a
think
pretty
they
Yes.
take 5
agile,
miles every single day. I love that.
it's a very agile model
Yeah.
when you just have the two of us.
Yeah.
So we can
Yeah,
move quickly.
that's a recipe for success. And what T was alluding to for our listeners and viewers here is we were hearing how the two of you walk 5 miles several days a week, uh, which is great, especially in Arkansas. It gets a little toasty up there, but that sounds like a good brainstorm session. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
uh, and Phil, just bringing you back in here again, Phil Macko. Obviously, your experience as a entrepreneur source coach, but you have your own business background. I was curious as to kind of how your own dip into entrepreneurship and kind of your experience. How were you able to kind of use that or kind of bring some ideas and help Joe and Cheri as they were looking for these new opportunities when you guys got connected?
Well, thank you for that question. And I will first say that while I appreciate the kind words, Joe and Cheri, you were both an honor and a pleasure to work with. And unlike oftentimes when I talk to folks who are, in career transition and they're kind of locked in a mindset that perhaps the job market is the only path for them. And sometimes unlocking that thought of possibility versus probability or expected outcome really takes some conversations. Conversely, when I met Joe for the first time, he ticked the boxes. He said, our goal is to give back to our community in a meaningful way. We live a healthy life, as you heard, 5 miles a day. I'm envious. I'm doing 3 a day, inspired by both of you. And I'll
Hey,
be up to
right
that
on.
5 mile mark one day soon. But during those talks, they talked about what they'd like life to look like, not determining the outcome of what that should be, but instead saying, we want something we can do with our kids. It could be a legacy that touches the lives of others, that is committed to healthfulness. And we enjoy working together. Post COVID, we found that we're a pretty good couple, both on the court and off the court, so to speak. Um, so that made my role really super easy. I didn't do anything. It was all led by the vision and the conversations these two had. And I'll tell you, I became aligned with the concept of franchising. I did have a medical diagnostic business for a number of years. Literally put a desk in my garage, bought a database, and started calling physicians. And the time it took to get messaging right, to reach the right people, to know how to present, to know how to cost, to build vendor relationships, to figure out shipping, all this infrastructure had to be built really before $1 came in. And then, quite a few years successfully operating the business. The Affordable Care Act came into negotiation, and it pretty much dried up capital equipment sales for a period of time. And because I was an independent business owner, I couldn't see these changes coming. I didn't have a lobbyist on Capitol Hill pointing out what was going to occur and how it might affect the business. Um, and that's what attracted me to the franchise world is when you have a system that has, in the case of Zavell, a brilliant origin story, the band Korn and how bringing Brian back to healthfulness brought this brand to the market. And then you find people like Joe and Cheri that say, we want to give back in a meaningful way to our community. It was just a wonderful fit and such a blessing for both of them and such an honor to have worked with them.
I love that, Phil, and I also love how you honor how Joe and Cheri had the vision. You just took them on this journey to discover what they already had within themselves. I think I read in the blog where Joe, you said, Phil was confident that we could be successful. We just needed to gain that confidence ourselves,
Mhm.
and just having the opportunity and explore, would it make sense to become an entrepreneur? Should we open up a business? Would it make sense to do something ourselves, or should we go the franchise route, right? Just it's really about education, awareness, and discovery, and then figuring out what's going to best serve your life's purpose. And it seems like you guys had a clear vision of how you wanted to give back to the community. It wasn't necessarily the end goal, but even just on a daily basis, what you want life to look like. Would you care to comment on maybe the value you feel your coach, Joe and Cheri, that your coach Phil brought to the table? Like, why was that so valuable to you?
Well, we didn't know anything about running a business, finding a business. We looked at some in Northwest Arkansas. And so I was just reading through the Entrepreneur Source and was looking at this these franchise coaches, these career coaches, right? And I'm like, that's what we need. And so after my first conversation with Phil, I was like, oh man, this person is going to help us decide what we are going to go do. I felt it just because he had such encouraging words to say, and he had so much knowledge to share as well. And man, it was just really cool to have dialogue with him. I couldn't wait till we had our conversations with him in our next conversation, because we just took more and more down about running a business, operating a business, and our encouragement and our confidence kept growing every conversation that we had. And when he presented some options for us, we walked through them with him and then told him, why we weren't going to do this one or why we weren't going to do that one. He did what a coach does. They point out things, they let you digest it, they put you back out on the field, you run another play, you come back in, you get a little more coaching, and you go back out and you score, right? And that's really what Phil did for us. It's really
look at the Phil for the audio audience. Phil's over there cracking up. Something tells me because it's true, Phil.
Those are such kind words. Such kind words. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you as we start to wrap things down, and just so we're clear, for those you may have not been in touch with the blog, obviously your business is Zavell, is a wellness franchise. You guys do cryotherapy, flotation therapy. So, just to give a sense to the listeners when we're talking about helping the community, quite literally, as we kind of wind things down, Joe and Cheri, just how is this experience in working with Phil and kind of finding this, really in the last year, how has this kind of changed your life? And again, T pointed out, you guys seem to be very quickly on a successful route here.
Yeah. And I would say not only have we been completely fulfilled ourselves with this business adventure, but just the relationships that we've already developed, the staff that we have that we're responsible for, that we work with, they've been fantastic. And then to extend even beyond that, just our business network group, our clientele, it just goes on. And we just look forward to getting up every day and coming in and coming to our second home, which is our work office. But it's been great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Phil, just do you have any, for aspiring entrepreneurs who may be out there listening or watching this, what advice would you have, for somebody looking for it? And it doesn't have to be, like you said, it could be you're stuck or you're looking for something different. Everybody's got a different circumstance. So what kind of advice would you offer?
Follow the lead that Joe and Cheri set. And that is, if you're focused on your goals and if you're open to possibilities and you're open-minded to just learn and explore, instead of having a narrow focus on what your life experience and perceptions to date have taught you to expect, instead to say, well, tomorrow can be different and perhaps new information might change that perspective. If you're just focused on your goals and open-minded to learn, who knows where it might take you? And that's really what I ask from any client that I might work with. And I think any client TES might work with is be like Joe and Cheri.
No, they're good examples. T, any closing thoughts?
Absolutely. If you've been inspired today listening to Joe and Cheri, and maybe you have some trepidation leaving your great corporate job behind, I just encourage you, give yourself permission to reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams. You don't need to act, but just educate yourself about what is possible, and the answer may surprise you.
Awesome. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot, and we always take a lot of these things, Tamara, so I appreciate it. I want to thank our guests here today, Joe and Cheri Mercer, along with Phil Macko, the queen, the chief of brand ideology there at the Entrepreneur Source, Tamara Loring. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. My name is Mike Toper, and thank you for joining us here on Your Career Revolution.